Hello and welcome to this special edition of Banfield, this Friday special edition. It's called The Death of a Teen and a Star Named David. The teen, of course, is Celeste Rivas Hernandez. The David is a 20-year-old superstar in the making who spells his name D4vd, but whose legal name is David Anthony Burke. Under any other circumstances, David would likely be spending this Friday night exactly the way you would expect for a 20-year-old platinum-selling multimillionaire, just coming off a 2-month tour. I'm thinking clubs and friends and fans and parties, maybe even one of those regular blowouts that neighbors said happen pretty often in that $20,000 a month mansion he was living in the Hollywood Hills. But tonight, that mansion is dark and it's empty. And David hasn't been seen in the LA party scene for weeks. And he hasn't been heard from publicly for just about as long. And why is that? The young dead girl, Celeste, who just yesterday was confirmed to be the very same Celeste the singer once wrote a love song about. She's the same girl he appeared with on live streams and the same girl he and his friends partied with in LA. And yes, she's the same girl he was involved with romantically, even though she was only 14 years old at the most. It's more than likely she was only 12 or 13 when the relationship began with David. That's when he was 17 or 18. In the hour ahead, we're breaking down the very latest details, beginning with one that might have gone unnoticed. I'll say it again, David has not been charged in this crime, nor has he been named a person of interest. But all the while, the LAPD has been unusually tight-lipped about the case. Yesterday, though, Chief Jim McDonnell of the LAPD did an interview, and deliberately or not, he said this. Did you catch that? Did you catch what he just said? The key words in that sentence? Homicide and associated issues. Homicide means death at the hands of another person, as opposed to a suicide or maybe an accidental overdose, because those are theories. Associated issues? That could refer to the fact that David's friends confirmed that he was in that romantic relationship with a girl of just 14. At this point, Celeste's cause and manner of death are listed as deferred, but if victim and boyfriend make up two key parts of this puzzle, the third part has to be the abandoned 2-year-old Tesla in which the girl's decomposing body was finally found 18 days ago. That's September 8th. My first guest tonight is a private investigator who specializes in missing persons, and he got his hands on the paper trail from that first ticket that went on the Tesla's windshield to the end of the line at the impound lot. And he learned that fed-up neighbors called police about this car on August the 26th. An officer came by the very next day and left a ticket on the window. A second ticket was issued September 3rd. And the car was finally towed September 5th, 3 days before it became a key piece of evidence in what's now being confirmed as a homicide. Steve Fisher is the man behind that pro bono detective work, and he joins me now live. Steve, thanks so much for being on tonight. Tell me about the tow report that you were able to obtain and some of the information that you learned from the report.
So, it was first called in by a neighbor on the 26th, and the only note that was on it was when they asked for any identifying information besides the license plate, they noted that there was a large dent in the back. And, it was curious that there wasn't an odor mentioned. Now, that doesn't absolutely mean that in the conversation with the agent, they didn't mention that and it just didn't get reported. But, in LA, a traffic officer has to come out at least 3 times before they can tow it on 3 different days. They have to chalk the tires, make sure it hasn't moved, because it is legal to park on that street. So, as far as what was gathered from that, it was nothing regarding the smell or anything, but for it to get towed from that area, considering there is no parking restrictions, it had to be there quite a while, I think.
Well, let's talk about that, because not only did you get your hands on the towing report with all the information it yielded, but you also knocked on some doors and you found some of the neighbors who indeed knew about that car and knew how long it had been there. What did they tell you?
I talked to someone that, nobody wanted to be on the record, but they said that they believe they're certain the car was there more than a month. There was somebody else that said that the car had moved around a couple different times, but that's going back as far as May. It had been moving around, and from those photos actually were embedded with the ticket that was taken. So when they provided the ticket on the 3rd, they give images, in case it goes to court and they can back it up. They're really high res images. I could really zoom into them, and I mean, that dirt is caked on that car. So I think that car got dumped a lot earlier than a lot of us think.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the pictures at the same time you are on screen, and our viewers are seeing it too. One of the things I noticed with the caked on dirt is that you would not have been able to drive it with windshields that caked. It would have been really hard to drive. So, and I'm just so sad when I see this car parked here, because you know that she's in the trunk in this image, and it's so sad to. Yeah, it's extraordinarily sad. It's not just a parked car that's getting a ticket and getting towed. It's a tomb where a girl had been decomposing, day after day after day. But it's interesting you say a month, but then it's also interesting you see the police came back 3 different times and chalked the tires. What's the protocol for them? Why didn't they tow it the first day they were called?
So they're not allowed to tow it unless it's documented that it has not moved in 72 hours. So now when they came out on the 26th, or they got called on the 26th, they came out first on the 27th. That happened to be Labor Day weekend. So, it wasn't until the 3rd, until Labor Day was over, they came out the second time. But by ordinance here in LA County, and I do very familiar with this because I live in the area, you have to move within 72 hours. If it's called in as abandoned, it has to also have other factors, such as it appears to be abandoned. If this car was clean, it wouldn't have been towed.
Yeah. The fact that, the first call came in and 8 days later it was towed, each time they came out and established the 72-hour rule and had those 3 that they have to have. Did the neighbors that you talked to say anything else about, other than, it's been here for about a month? Did anybody say it smelled?
Not that I talked to. I know that I've seen reports that somebody did, but not that I talked to. However, the street that it's on, and I don't know if this was done on purpose or not, but the street, Bluebird, is just this little street with about 6 houses on it. It kind of makes a semicircle that wraps from one end of Doheny and meets back up at Doheny. So it's not a super traveled street. Now, Doheny is, so you drive by it, but where it was is kind of like a strategic area where there's only, see that road right there wraps around to the right, and then it connects again to the main road. So there's not too many people that will walk by it. And these hedges on this house are so high that it really takes out people walking on the other side of the vehicle. So I don't know if it was actually done strategically, but if you're going to leave it somewhere, that's as good a place to leave it as any.
Well, the curious thing is, listen, and this is a sort of a weird topic, but I have a septic field and a septic system, and I've grown up that way, and I know that when the winds shift, it doesn't matter what kind of hedge is nearby. It doesn't matter if it's 30 feet away. You can smell those odors, and I'm just wondering if anybody on the other side of the hedge or across the street, or within, say, 50 feet of where that car was parked, had noticed that smell and wondered what it was. Because I believe the only report we had about that car was that somebody thought a dead animal was nearby.
Yeah, and I'll bet you now, in hindsight, they might. But I think that, without this happening, you walk by a car, it's the last thing you think is that somebody's in the trunk, deceased. And so you probably chalk it up to a bunch of other things, like you said, a sewer line broke. I mean, it's LA, stuff like this happens a lot. I'm talking about like sewer lines and whatnot. And there's a lot of construction going on in that area all the time. So you could chalk it up to, they hit a line or something like that. I mean, really the last place people go is there's a body in a trunk, Now, of course, now that we know that happened, it's easier to think that way. But,
Oh yeah, hindsight's 2020, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm going to ask you about the damage on this car because you've got a lot of insight into something we haven't all noticed in the video. But before I do that, I want to ask you about this location. I thought it was blocks and blocks away from David's house. It isn't.
No, I'd say it's probably 150 feet to Doheny Place, which he's on, from the rear of, from the trunk of that vehicle, because he's the first spot. He's there parked on the first spot there. It's very close. In fact, on a weekend, I could see somebody parking there because there wasn't street parking on his street because his street's very small.
Like it's one street over from where his house actually is?
Half a block, because his street is really kind of like almost like an alleyway. It's not an alley, but it's really a half of a regular block because the way the neighborhood's split up, it's very close. You could throw a rock at it.
It's unbelievable. It almost makes you wonder if the smell might have even reached the front door of that mansion. Let me ask you about the damage. I didn't notice damage in the towing and in the drone videos, but what did you know about?
Well, I didn't really know until I saw these photos. And this car, this is a 2023 Model X. He paid $104,000 for this. I've seen the invoice, and it's just beat up. I don't know what they've done to this car, but I mean, all the wheel wells have got damage, and I'm not really a car guy, but those side fenders on the other side are off. There's huge dent in the rear. The guy parking there also noticed front right damage. So I don't know what happened to this car because I've seen, for instance, I found a Google Maps image of it happening parked in front of the house, right? The street view, and it does not look damaged there. So I don't know when this happened or how it happened, but it almost looks like it's been off road.
Originally we all thought it was a Model Y until this video showed the door handles, and the door handles apparently are the giveaway for the Model X because they're angel wing doors. They go up instead of out. And so the reports are all changing. I mean, every official report that we saw was a Model Y. It looks very much like a Tesla I have, which is a Model Y, but apparently it is this Model X. And I can tell you one thing, my Tesla was not $104,000. So this is a really souped up version. Mine was like a fifth of that, honest to God. I can't believe
the X has got
that car was
larger,
that expensive.
Yeah, the X has got a larger frunk too. It's 6.6 cubic feet as opposed to 4.2 like the Model Y. So kind of explains how she might have fit in there as well.
Well, that's a very sad fact that I'll end on. Gosh, I thank you, Steve. Really great digging. I appreciate you doing that. Please come back and talk to us again because I know that you're still watching this story and digging on this story as we all are. Appreciate this.
Thanks for having me.
Steve Fisher joining us tonight. And in just a moment, for the very first time, Celeste is seen on tape right before she becomes a missing person. Here she is in critical surveillance video, leaving home at just 13 years old, and she breaks into a sprint. The man who owns the video had some fascinating insights into what kind of kid Celeste was. And let me tell you something, it is not what you might think of a runaway. That's next. When police found the badly decomposed remains of Celeste Rivas Hernandez in the trunk of her rich boyfriend's Tesla, it kicked off a spiraling mystery 2.5 weeks ago. But it also ended another mystery, one that had lasted 1.5 years. Celeste was a missing person from the age of 13 on. Her disappearance was reported to the Sheriff's Department of Riverside County, where she lived. In April of 2024, that report went in. But she had been a runaway at least twice before that, in January and again in March of that year. Now TMZ has obtained video from the March disappearance. It was captured by a surveillance camera down the street from Celeste's home in Lake Elsinore, California. There's Celeste, right there, at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday. This was March 19th. Where she's going and why she starts to run is unclear. But one thing is certain. This minute-long video is critical to what came next in her young life, as is personal information about Celeste herself from the man who owns the cameras. I spoke a short time ago about all of this with TMZ executive producer Charles Ladibaudiere, and here's our conversation. Charles, tell me about this video, when it was taken, and the significance of the date and time.
Well, the video that we obtained from this is surveillance video from a liquor store in Lake Elsinore, California. The date is March 19th, 2024. What's significant about that date is this was around the time where what we've heard now from several people who have known, who knew Celeste, is that she was a runaway, and that in early 2024, there were multiple times that she ran away from home. This would have been either the second or third time, we're trying to figure that out, that she ran away in March. The first time had been in January. We've talked about it, that the police found her in Hollywood and brought her back to her family. But in March, she took off again. And we know this because her sister went into this liquor store and asked the owner if he had seen her come into the store. Did he have any surveillance video that might have shown her or where she went? He went back and looked at his cameras, and he did see this video, which shows Celeste walking down the street, walking at first, but then running, and she's running toward someone. Now, you lose it in the video because she gets too far down the street and you can't make out the vehicle, but the owner of the liquor store who we spoke to told us there was a car waiting for her there.
I'll tell you, I zeroed in on a couple of details. One of the details was that it's 7 a.m. And I thought, what on earth could be going on in her life at 7 a.m. that this would cause a problem, and her sister would eventually ask for this video that day. And then I thought, well, that's usually a school bus pickup or dropout, you know, a pickup time. So is it thought that maybe she left home ostensibly to go to the school bus, didn't get on the school bus? Eventually, when she was reported as truant, maybe her sister started to ask, oh, I wonder if she ever did get on the school bus, and found the video showing that she didn't.
Yeah, that is exactly what happened here, Ashleigh, because the liquor store owner told us he was aware of Celeste and most of the kids in that neighborhood. Again, this liquor store is on the end of the block where Celeste's family lives. And he said that all the kids, when they would get off the school bus, or even when they were getting on the school bus, they would come into his store to buy, you know, drinks or candy, snacks. And so he spoke to a lot of the kids. He knew Celeste, and he told us that, you know, as far as he knew, he didn't know of any trouble at home, or that she was in any jeopardy or anything that he knew of. We have been told by law enforcement sources that they described her home life as troubled.
You and I have talked a little bit about this before, but I keep thinking every day something will loosen up with the LAPD. But I feel like you're getting the sense that this is one of the most tight-lipped cases they've had.
I'm not sure exactly why, but that is an accurate description. I mean, we cover a lot of stories not like this necessarily, but we cover a lot of stories involving law enforcement here in Hollywood, in the Hollywood area. You usually hear something, right? The police forces are too large to not hear something, and there is a clear order from someone to make sure that we keep a tight lid on they keep a tight lid on whatever it is that they've learned at this point. We've just heard so little.
Aren't you so shocked? I mean, honestly, this is the kind of case that screams for the public. We need your help. If you saw something on this date or this time or in this window, please call us. Tips help. You can ask the people in the Idaho case. The tips helped, and they really do bring in a lot of information and good leads. There's been nothing. There's been no request from the LAPD, which tells me they got what they need. They just need to figure out what the next step is to make sure it's not a mess.
And that they're trying to figure out how to connect some dots.
This seems to be another social media, investigation. Is it helping, or is it hurting that there are so many true crime sleuths trying to piece together the puzzle?
I think, you said this just a few minutes ago, Ashleigh, that public tips help, right? And there are certainly, and I would imagine the LAPD is people who are looking at specializing in social media, combing through some of this material that's out there. It can only help. And, you know, one of the things that I've learned a lot about as we've been covering this story is Discord. And there's a ton of information that is available there in David's communications with his fans and his fans' communications with Celeste. Whether or not any of it is going to lead to a location, where she was, who she was hanging out with, we haven't seen that yet. But I know that there is so much information out there. And if you have people on social media who are digging through it themselves, you never know. One of them might find the thing that, and certainly I hope that if they do, that they are sharing that with law enforcement. So maybe police are getting those tips anyway.
Charles Adebaudire, I know you have to go. I'm always so thankful. I appreciate it, sir.
Happy to talk to you anytime.
Sooner rather than later.
Yes, indeed. Thanks, Ashleigh.
My thanks to Charles. And also, there's something in that video that I'm going to bring up in just a moment. It was a little detail that was weird. A woman who walks by Celeste has a reaction. I'm going to play it for you in a little bit and ask one of my special guests about it. But I got to take a quick break for a minute here. Our special report continues, though, with the search for an alibi. Will David's concert tour give him cover in what we now know is a homicide investigation? We're going to take you through each of his tour dates to find out just how strong an alibi that tour might be, should he actually need an alibi. That's next. The only people who need alibis are people suspected of crimes. And as we sit here tonight, the music star named David, spelled D4vd, is not one of those, a suspect. Or if he is, police sure aren't saying it. But given the fact that his underage girlfriend turned up dead in the trunk of his car in his neighborhood, and given that police have already raided his house and carted off items of interest, he may indeed need an alibi in the not-too-distant future. And that's where his concert tour comes in, his now canceled concert tour. By the way, David does still have dates open on his calendar for 2026. We looked into the lineup for the South American leg of Lollapalooza next March, and he is still listed as one of the acts, but I would not try to buy tickets just yet. As recently as last night, tickets were still being sold for David shows in Australia. But tonight, there are no David shows in Australia. Anyway, David's availability for the future shows could certainly depend on his past ones, the ones leading up to September 8th, when police found this: the underage girlfriend dead in the trunk of his Tesla in a tow lot. She'd been decomposing for weeks, maybe over a month, in that trunk, right up until police responded to the call from the impound lot that the stench from the car was overwhelming. So where was the singer when the girl's body was discovered? And maybe more importantly, where was the singer when she was wrapped in plastic and put into that trunk, only for that trunk to be closed for the final time? Judging from the concert poster, David's Withered tour, in support of his debut album, kicked off August 5th in Del Mar, California, on the outskirts of San Diego. And as jam-packed as this list looks, it is not even a complete list. Several shows were added, both before the official kickoff and before the remaining dates were scrapped just a week ago tonight. So on paper, it looks almost impossible for David to have been involved in whatever happened to Celeste. But not really. We did find some holes in his schedule, windows where he could have traveled back and forth to LA. But that raises the question of how David's entourage was traveling, or at least how David was traveling. The tour was laid out in geographical order, the way you would hit those cities if you were, say, driving a tour bus. But nowhere in the articles or the posts is there any mention of a bus. The only transportation that's ever shown or referenced is an airplane, sometimes a private plane, which opens up a lot of possibilities. But there is still the question of time. And to figure that out, we cross-checked a couple of key resources. Concertarchives.org tracks every show by every artist you can name, often including videos, photos, and even set lists. We also looked at David's personal tour diary. He has an Instagram account just for his concerts called Concerts and Travels called David Tour. And what did we find? Back on July 30th, David played a show at the Warfield Theater in San Francisco. It wasn't an official tour date, and it wasn't on his schedule, so maybe it was just like a tune-up show to get ready for the tour. He had 3 days off after that, until his next date, August 2nd, in Del Mar. Also not listed on the tour schedule, he played there on August 2nd, had another 2 days off, and then played again on the 5th. Leaving plenty of time to get back and forth to Los Angeles, even if by bike. Between the start of his tour and the first week of September, it looks like David had 13 different days off from this tour. July 31st, August 3rd, 4th, 7th, 10th, 11th, 14th, 18th, 21st, 25th, 27th, 31st, and September 1st. But the only chunks of time where he had more than 1 day off in a row, those happened on August 3rd and 4th, and August 10th and 11th. And then again, August 31st and September 1st. It looks like we can account for his whereabouts, though, on that third set of days, August 31st and September 1st, and here's how. On the 1st, he posted this photo of himself and his photographer next to a private plane. Pay attention to what David is wearing in this picture. Also pay attention to his hairstyle, because when we checked his main Instagram against his travel Instagram, we found this video of David. Notice the same clothes, same hair, and he's telling fans that he's headed to Houston to see his friend Callie perform. That video was posted on September 7th, but that does not mean that it was shot on September 7th, right? It was actually more than likely shot on September 1st, just like this one, the picture of him next to the private plane, wearing the same clothes with the same hairstyle. In fact, David was actually performing on stage in Madison, Wisconsin on September 7th, so he could not have been flying to Houston on the 7th when this video was posted. So again, probably shot on the 1st, posted on the 7th. Bottom line, this dead girl's boyfriend had 11 days to himself in the month leading up to the day that police found Celeste's body, which means exactly nothing if he is never named as a suspect or if he is never charged. And it also means next to nothing if he is charged. And authorities can't figure out when Celeste actually died, and maybe more importantly, when she was stashed in the trunk of David's Tesla. All right, guys, have a good weekend. You know, I have never really believed that there's no such thing as bad publicity. I mean, I think of Diddy and OJ and Casey Anthony, not good. But if David comes out of this mess unscathed, and I mean legally unscathed, I might just change my mind. And that's because the verdict is already in on his career, and it seems the impact of this tragedy has not been tragic at all for his career. I'm going to run you the numbers in a moment. If you didn't know the R&B singer named David, spelled D4vd, a few weeks ago, but now you do, and if you downloaded one of his songs for the first time and became a fan, it is not because of anything his manager, his record label, or his PR team did. It's because a dead teenager was found in the trunk of his car. And P.S., you've got plenty of company. Since September 8th, when the remains of Celeste Rivas Hernandez were found, David's overall music streams have doubled to 30,300,000 in the United States alone. And the track with the biggest boost, the one called Romantic Homicide, it's gone from 2.9 million streams to 9.4 million streams in just 2.5 weeks. And here's the weird part. Celeste is making money too, sort of, in the world of virtual currency. On some of the more obscure crypto sites that I don't pretend to understand, her name has become a token. Some call it a meme coin. Justice for Celeste coins are trading online for actual money, hundreds of thousands of dollars. But where that money is coming from and where it is going to, where do the tokens come from and who decides what they're worth? A crypto journalist. And yes, that's a real thing too. Poses the question, tribute or exploitation, and on that I say the jury's out. Thanks for joining us. Have a good weekend. Cuomo's next.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.